And good morning, welcome to Hot Seat. Hey, shout out to the dads this weekend and to the moms that put up with them. And one of the dads at the University of Oklahoma who runs is the chair of the economics department is Dr. Greg Burge. Good to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here, Scott. Thank you so much.
Good to be here. I've got a friend, by the way, Boomer.
Sooner.
So a friend of mine, Jerry Isbell, who does all that great work at Lemons for Life, is always saying, Mitchell, you got to work more economics into the politics, right?
More economics.
So this is for you, Jerry. We'll get this done. Now, I'm glad we're doing this after the debt ceiling debate, because sometimes when political reporters talk about economics and economic reporters talk about politics, it can be an ugly baby.
Yeah.
Okay. And so one of the things that's happened now is on the other side of this, I may want to ask you to give a grade for Congress through economic IQ, but I won't put you on I don't think many of them would pass your class. But let's start with the debt ceiling fight. What came out of that we really don't understand that we should?
That's a great question. I mean, one of the things I think that came out of it is just how problematic uncertainty over things like the debt ceiling can be for the real economy. So when you think about something like this spring, we've had a great spring. The economy's going like gangbusters. Business is good, sales are good, people are in jobs, wages are rising. But the entire month leading up to that debt ceiling resolution was just uncertain, right?
Sketchy,
I mean, it was sketchy.
Right?
It was sketchy, and you had, I mean, whether you look at the stock market or whether you look at other indicators like consumer spending, they really took a pause for about a month, and May was rough. And then as soon as there's resolution, as soon as calmer heads prevail and the Biden administration and Speaker McCarthy come together and they come up with bipartisan legislation that really kind of solves the problem and moves us forward, then markets just take right back off. So I think the thing people sometimes miss is that in a way the system is broken. I mean, we have, this problem come up every couple of years. And in some ways it's getting worse and worse because partisan politics is getting worse and worse. So what both parties try to accomplish through these negotiations just gets more and more embittered. Because sometimes it seems like that's the only time you can really advance your agenda. And that should be the opposite way around. What I feel like it should really be just that it's a default, that you pay your bills, you move, you advance forward, and you should have to vote to not do that, right? So I've heard proposals to actually flip it all around and just have simple extensions of the debt ceiling that are just all about economics and just paying the bills and meeting your obligations, just be the automatic default. And then if Congress wants to get together and do something different, fine, but that should be where the legislation is required.
Concern you at all that there are so many people in Congress that would go right off the cliff?
It does. It does. I think there's probably not a good understanding from that crowd of what would actually happen. Just our position globally, our leading role with currency markets, and that does bother me a little bit. I mean, I understand why they do it because they're speaking to their bases, but it's a good political move, but it's not a good economic move.
Okay, if you look at a bunch of the media this week, inflation is over. Now, that's nonsense because the Fed hit the pause button. That's all. Core inflation's still high. But we see that sort of reporting, right? People think that everything's fine. It's not. But give us an idea about where you think we're at now in inflation and what could be around the corner.
Right. Well, I mean, we're definitely making progress, right? So, I mean, if we were sitting here a year ago, we would have been talking about just some of the first initial reductions off record high inflation, right, literally in 40 years. So we've been making a lot of progress. But yeah, the narrative that inflation is over, that's just a bunch of garbage. We still have serious issues with inflation. The Fed raised rates 10 times in a row in an unprecedentedly rapid manner. And, just this recent decision to pause, it's very interesting, but they're still forecasting 2 more rate hikes, in the next few months. And the Fed funds rate is going to be sitting over 5% for quite some time. They wouldn't do that unless, they have a real understanding that inflation is still an issue, and it is still an issue. It's still about double what they want to see, and in some sectors of the economy, just simple things like childcare, cost of putting food on the table, travel. These sorts of things are still at 6 to 8, even 10% rate of inflation, which is just too high. Now, the saving grace is energy costs have come down a little bit, right? Cheaper gas, so when you fill up at the pump, you don't feel the pain quite as much, and that's a good thing. So making progress, keeping at it. But the Fed is definitely going to sit at those high rates. And then, that's going to have big impacts on the economy.
Dr. Burge, good to have you.
It's good to be here. Really enjoyed it.
Happy Father's Day. Hope to see you again soon. It's an
thank you so much.
Amazing time. And if you're not understanding the economics going into the politics, you don't get the big picture. So thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for watching Hot Seat. See this again, the entire full interview at news9.com/Roebuck Council, and follow me on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook at Mitchell Talks.